On this episode of the Neutral Wisdom podcast, Satanist and Satanic Warlock Shirley discusses sensitivity and being offended and is joined by comedian Raul Atondo. You are listening to the Neutral Wisdom podcast, a podcast dedicated to passing on knowledge and experience from a satanic perspective, hosted by Satanist and Satanic Warlock Shirley.
Greetings and welcome to the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Satanist and Satanic Warlock Shirley, and today we're going to be talking about a subject not so near and dear to my heart, being offended. Later, comedian and Infernal Legion member Raul Atondo will be joining me to discuss this, as well as his experiences as a stand-up comic. So I'm going to have to speak as a Gen Xer here, since that is what I am. I'm sure I don't speak for my entire generation, nor would I claim to. But what I've noticed as I've gotten older is that people in general seem to be way more sensitive than they used to. Or is it just me who's noticed this? Seems like you really can't say anything anymore without someone being offended by it. Now, I totally get it if the offender was being offensive on purpose, for example, doing or saying something they knew would get a negative reaction. By all means, knock your socks off. Be offended if it suits you. Take the opportunity to stand up for yourself and your beliefs. Society's become more connected through social media and the internet, and we're definitely more aware of things that might have been overlooked or accepted in the past, like discrimination, inequality, or cultural appropriation. I also get it if you're offended by ignorance. Perhaps a person didn't know what they didn't know and were spouting off some offensive rhetoric. Again, fair enough. That would be an opportunity to educate that person. I think the key in either case is not that you were offended. Rather, it's how you approach it. Sure, the offender may have upset you or gotten you escalated to the point of anger, but remember that you are the one who's in control of how you handle it. For example, if I were to say something that offends you, and trust me, if we ever meet in person, I most likely will, it's far better to let me know in a diplomatic manner with logic and common sense. If you approach me with just the words, "I'm offended," guess what kind of reaction you'll get from me? And that is the problem I have with people being offended. Sure, you have every right to be offended by me. But does that mean that if you tell me I'm offended or that offends me, that I'll fall to the ground in the fetal position, sobbing and begging to be shot and pissed on for my oh-so-evil ways? I'll give you about 5 seconds to come up with an answer to that question for yourself. The actual thought processes that go through my mind, as well as my actual reaction when this happens, are well outlined in the essays for today's show. If I offend you, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm wrong. It means I have a different opinion than you do. And as they say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Newsflash, we don't have to agree. Now, granted, if I'm being a dick, and you can tell I'm being a dick, and trust me, when I am, it's very obvious, by all means, call me on it. If I'm expressing an opinion that is harmful, racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, then tell me. The one thing I can do well is listen and communicate. If you approach me in a rational manner, even if you're escalated a little bit, I will always take the time to listen to your opinion. Again, we don't have to agree, and we might even argue a little bit. But I can always take a learning moment from everything, whether it's being corrected on facts or just knowing when not to shoot my mouth off. I do think today's essay expands on this more than I can in this introduction. Without further ado, this essay is titled, "If Something Offends You, Please Let Me Know. I Could Use a Good Laugh." I suppose I've been writing and podcasting long enough that my rapier-like wit is by now pretty obvious. I have a way of seeing the world through a series of filters, all while trying not to take myself too seriously. Neutral wisdom is exactly what it implies. Experience and knowledge, which is neither good nor bad. You can take it or leave it. But it will be presented in my own style, and you can take that or leave it as well. So, as a Gen Xer, let's talk about the latest catchphrase to assault my sensitive ears. I'm offended. It's interesting that I, as a self-identified grumpy old man, have 3 reactions to this statement out of total necessity. My initial gut reaction, a required reaction, and my real reaction. But first, how about we take a look at what this statement really means at its core? I'm offended. There are many opinions as to why a person might make this statement. Maybe the person is a Karen type who feels entitled. Maybe the person has a savior complex and is sticking up for someone else. Maybe it's a generational behavior. However, to say I'm offended by something means that the speaker feels hurt, insulted, or upset by a remark, action, or situation. It's a way for individuals to communicate their discomfort and call for more respectful or considerate behavior from others. This feeling of offense often arises from a perceived violation of personal values, beliefs, or social norms. When someone expresses they are offended, it typically indicates they believe the subject in question is disrespectful, inappropriate, or harmful in some way. Okay, fine. Given the definition and context, I can see that. However, the realist in me sees this as a perceived violation of harm. Is the person actually harmed by the offensive subject? If not, it's simply hurt feelings. To illustrate the three different types of reactions I must have to this statement, allow me to relate an incident that happened to me a while back. I was visiting an establishment away from my home office and at a coffee shop on a break with my colleagues. We were discussing staffing in my organization, and I noted that our corporate culture was shifting. Being comfortable with my fellow teachers, I made the comment that the majority of people currently in my field were old ladies with one foot out the door. My colleagues were all in agreement. No one at the table was offended by anything I said. When we got up to leave, I was approached by a person at another table who was not involved in our discussion. She told me that my comments had offended her and that I should know better. Well, okay then. So how did I handle this? So first, there's my gut reaction, and I'd like to quote comedian Stephen Fry. It's now very common to hear people say, I'm offended by that, as if that gives them certain rights. It's no more than a whine. It has no meaning. It has no purpose. It has no reason to be respected as a phrase. I'm offended by that. Well, so fucking what? Thank you, Stephen Fry. I have no problem quoting something which sums up my own reaction so beautifully. As Satanists, we believe in responsibility to the responsible. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. It's not my responsibility for how you take it. Do you agree with me? Good for you. Disagree? Good for you. Offended? I don't give a fuck. First of all, lady, you weren't part of the conversation. So anything I said wasn't for your ears. Second, what makes you think I give a good goddamn about your opinion? Third, why even bother to tell me? Was that supposed to make me feel bad about myself? Because, newsflash, it didn't work. What about the required reaction we're supposed to have? Well, all of the things under my gut reaction are things I believe and indicative of what actually goes through my head in a situation like that. However, although I am apathetic to offending anyone, I am also not stupid. Were I to verbalize these things aloud to the offended person, what are the odds that somebody with a cell phone would capture the entire exchange and that the entire exchange would be posted on social media? I know that my gut reaction is simply not acceptable to society. Careers and lives are destroyed by videos of people expressing their thoughts, especially if these are contrary to proper behavior. In addition to that, thanks to workplace harassment policies, responding inappropriately anywhere in a working area, the coffee shop is on company property and as such is considered a working area, could result in a harassment complaint against yours truly. The required and expected reaction would be to become aware, be humbled and embarrassed by my statement, and apologize profusely for having offended another human being. But do you think I did that? Let's tell you what my real reaction was. Oh, did I? Thanks for letting me know. Sorry you were offended. You have yourself a great day. Did I demonstrate remorse for the things I said? Nope. Did I apologize? Also no. But did I appear to be remorseful and apologize? Yes. And did she accept it and feel like she won some sort of moral victory? Also yes. Lesser magic, ladies and gentlemen. As I've said many times, it's better to kill them with kindness. Remember the Morabian model of communication. Words count for 7%, tone of voice for 38%, and facial expression for 55% of all communication. From a lesser magic perspective, you have to analyze the situation, and you have to be able to do this quickly. This woman was already escalated. She wanted me to feel contrite and regret for what I had said. While I didn't give her that satisfaction through my words, she did seem to get it through my facial expression and body language. Because, and let's be totally honest here, my words told her that her taking offense to my statement was her own goddamn fault. Just as a side note, I later had to deal with this same person in a professional capacity. There were no apparent problems in our interaction. In fact, it was very cordial. How about your reaction? What works for me might not work for you. How would you handle a situation like this? I believe you have to leverage your natural talents and skills to navigate around any type of a conflict situation. As always, communication skills and lesser magic are key to being able to react quickly and think on your feet. As a Satanist, simply don't say anything you're not ready and willing to defend. Remember, responsibility to the responsible. And just another note, if, like me, you use comedy to diffuse an uncomfortable situation or hide your pain, you could simply use a snappy comeback like the following. And I take no responsibility for the outcomes resulting from your use of any of these statements. That sounds like an ish you, not an ish me. Wow, that'll be $2, please. Well, my work here is done. Well, that was easy. On a scale of 1 to 10, how offended? I like to get at least a 6. I would love an 8, but 6 is my minimum. Let's pause here for a break. When we come back, we're joined by comedian Raul Atondo to discuss this subject. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. For comments, questions or suggestions, email us at information@neutralwisdom.ca. Devilish Gentleman Enterprises is pleased to announce the release of Neutral Wisdom, Contemplations of a Satanic Warlock. This book, the first publication by author Robert Shirley, provides a detailed exploration of the philosophy, principles, and practices of Satanism from the perspective of a satanic warlock. The author, a member of the Church of Satan and a graduate of the Warlock Academy, outlines his journey to embracing Satanism and offers practical advice on how others can apply these teachings to their own lives. The book also includes personal anecdotes and reflections on the author's experiences with Satanism and the Warlock self, aiming to inspire others to explore and embrace their true selves through the lens of Satanic philosophy. Overall, it serves as both a guide and a personal manifesto for those interested in the Satanic path. Look for this release on Amazon and Kindle. Visit neutralwisdom.ca for more information. Ever forward.
And welcome back to the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. I'm super excited to welcome our guest for today, someone who I'm sure has offended more people than I have during his career, although I can't guarantee that. A combat veteran with a couple of tours, a member of the Infernal Legion, a Latino dance instructor, a mentor to young men, a Lyft driver, a stand-up How the hell did you find time to come on this show today? But I'm happy to have you here. Welcome, Raul House of Fire Atondo.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on this show, sir.
Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard that. So I'll take that for what it's worth. I very much appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Thanks for taking the time to come out here. You're a busy man with a packed schedule. And even given what we were talking about just before I hit record here, you got a lot of things to say, and I'm looking forward to hearing most of them. Well, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, your military time. And by the way, thank you for your service. I know how you Infernal Legion guys feel about hearing that, but I'm going to say it anyway. How did you come to our philosophy? Just fill us in. Give us a little background on who you are.
All right. So my name is Raul House of Fire Atondo. My nickname and performance name is House of Fire. I'm a resident and native here of Yuma, Arizona. And shout out, thank you so much to Yuma County Library for letting me use their media studio room. I was born and raised here till I was 19. And then I joined the United States Army Infantry. Graduated from Fort Benning, Georgia as a mortarman, as an 11 Charlie. Shot over to South Korea, more so Camp Greaves, which is about 4 miles from the DMZ. I did Korea for a year, considered a hostile tour. Stayed over there for the full year. I didn't take leave. And then I shot over to Fort Hood, Texas, mechanized as a mortarman. After about a year and a half of training at Fort Hood, I shot over to Iraq for my first Iraq combat tour. My first Iraq tour was Camp Taji. After a year, redeployed back to Fort Hood for another year of training, and then shot over back to Iraq for Camp Falcon, where I did another combat tour for a full year, with obviously a little gap for like 6 or 7 days of leave. Then shot back to Fort Hood, and then I exited a ETS from the Army in 2009, July. Didn't do too well. The Army trains us to kill people, but it doesn't teach us to survive and be in the civilian world.
You were a young man when you got out too, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 25. I had turned 26 July of that year.
And
Yep.
so you got a lot of testosterone and confused feelings going on when you come out of there. You come out of there not really having a trade that was transferable to
Right.
civilian life. So what did you start to do when you got out? What did you decide to do with yourself, and what kind of
Oh
brought you to where
man.
you are right now?
When I got out, I hate to say it, I needed my hand. I needed somebody to guide my hand. And when you get out, nobody leads your fucking hand.
Hmm.
So I was really burning through my savings. I had gotten a job as a worst job of all time, a telephone debt collector.
Oh boy.
And talk about taking your fucking soul. Like anytime you call somebody and say, I need to collect a debt, especially if it's an old lady or whatever, that really sucks. So I did that for maybe a month because I sucked dick at it. And then I worked for two different cab companies, which sets the precedent for what I do now as a Lyft driver and as an entertainer. I realized I really like talking to people because now I've learned through, thank you, Dr. LeVay. Now through greater magic and lesser magic, I've learned how to make opportunities for myself and being able to put myself into situations and advocate for myself. 25 and 26-year-old Raul out of Fort Hood didn't know how to advocate for himself.
I'm getting this just from talking to you. So
Mhm.
let's go down this road here for a second. At some point after you got out of the army and
Yeah,
25, 26-year-old Raul is surviving, you
yeah.
decided you were funny. And you are. I mean, I'm not taking that away from you at all. So
Thank you.
you do stand-up comedy. How
I
did you
do.
get into stand-up comedy? And I'm not the funniest guy in the world, but I can hold my own. But I don't think I could do what you do by getting up in front of a mic and talking to people. So how did you get into it? What made you decide that you were funny enough to get up and entertain people with stand-up comedy?
I was an infantryman for 6 years, and infantrymen are just fucking funny, man. Because being in the army, being in the combat arms, it just forces you to really re-examine life and understand what things are rather than what you think they were or ought to be. My sister changed my life. I moved back to Yuma, Arizona in 2009 to help my sister with her restaurant. Shout out to Jack and Rosie Steakhouse. My sister told me, "Hey, brother, I know you're not doing too well over there in Killeen, which is a city outside of Fort Hood, excuse me." And she's like, I want to hire you to move back and help me run the restaurant. So one of the first nights that I was at the restaurant, I was the front of the house manager. So all the patrons had left, all the customers. It was my sister's staff and myself, and I was still behind the bar, and we, quote unquote, put our hair down, and have a couple drinks. So I started, giving some of our servers some drinks and whatnot, and we were just hanging out, and my sister was at the other end of the bar, just hanging out, watching everybody. And my sister will be like, good job, guys. We got to order some more T-bones tomorrow, more porterhouses, etc. So with me, I just turned it on, and by that I mean I was starting to be silly. I was just playing around. I was just being silly, And by the time you know it, one person started laughing. And since laughter is a wave of sound, one person started laughing, the other person started laughing, and the whole fucking staff started laughing. I withdrew, and then I went at it again. I rolled up I buttoned up my shirt, my Corona work shirt, and I just started being silly slash kind of like a jackass. Started being really silly, and I started doing shit with my eyes. There was an eruption, and I just started being fucking funny. Your Uncle Charlie can be funny. Your Aunt Tracy can be funny here and there. Everybody can kind of be funny. All real Satanists are atheists, but not all atheists are Satanists. So a majority of people can be cute funny for 2 minutes, but not everybody can be consistently funny, and that's a skill. So I was being silly, and then by the time you know it, just whoop, blam, everybody was laughing. I was like, okay, that's just a day in the life for me. The next night, my sister takes me to Tucson, Arizona, visit one of my brothers, and she looks at me in her truck. She looks over at me and she's like, "Brother, you're really fucking funny. How did you get so funny?" It's like saying, "Robert, you're really white. How did you get so white?"
Oh, it's a gift. Trust me.
You know? And it's like, "Brother, how did you get so?" It's like it's not really a thing. Like, how did you get so good at carpentry? You know? But it's funny is like when you see the opening, Satanists are metaphysicians. So we look at the reality and you start to tort it. You start to Doctor Strange it. You start to understand the reality of it and start to like push and in certain areas and start to see where the doors are. I guess I learned it in the army. I was, being an infantry guy, being around my mortar buddies, my follow 11 Charlies. I was like, I guess I'm funny. That's the humble Raul. I guess I'm funny. She's like, no, you're really funny. You made the whole staff laugh last night. And I'm like, yeah, they were kind of laughing. They're like, no, they're really laughing. They really enjoyed you. I was like, okay, I guess so. She's like, maybe you should try something with that. So my first open mic was at Strummer's Lounge. And that was my first open mic. I did about 3 minutes. I got some Snickers. I got a couple like giggles, but I didn't have anything written out. But I was just trying to be funny, trying to say a couple things. I mentioned something about the Catholic Church, and the word of Catholic Church makes smile. It makes you smile right now. So as soon as I said that, somebody was like pointing at me like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, all right. I did quote unquote, I attempted stand up for about 2 to 3 minutes. And then they gave me the light. I got down. I learned at that moment I shouldn't take more than one shot before I go on stage. But somebody found out. Obviously, he's like, "You doing this open mic?" I was sitting next to this gentleman, this white guy, and he's like, "Are you going up?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna try to do stand up for my first time." He's like, "Shit, man, congratulations. Let me buy you a shot." So, fuck, dude, that guy bought me like 3 more shots. Bad mistake. But that was my first open mic. Currently now I have around 100, 120 shows now that I've done.
As a comedian and
Yeah.
as someone who does a lot of crowd work, you must deal with a couple types of offended. So if we were to look at them one at a time, you're writing your own jokes. When you're writing
Yeah.
your material, what's your process? Do you have to think about your jokes if they could be considered offensive? And one of the diffusing things that you say, which is fantastic, they're just words. It builds off of the George Carlin thing of words and how words are used, but your ability to diffuse that tension by saying they're just words. And you can hear it sometimes in the crowd where people go, yeah, you know what? He's right. Why am I taking this so seriously? So when you're writing your material, are you thinking about being offensive or are you just writing down stuff that you think's funny?
When I write stuff down, I am just thinking of a subject. I might think of single moms. I write that down. I write single moms. And then as I make the imprint on the paper, it starts to take a life of itself. So we're just putting the seed on. The seeds are not trees yet. The trees literally happen on stage. I will write like 5 pages of stuff. They're just stuff. And they're not jokes yet. The actual jokes don't formulate till after you watered them. And I might say, I might write senior citizens orgies. There's a lot of orgies happening here in the Yuma area because in the foothills area because there's a lot of swingers and shit. And that right there, like that's not supposed to be fun. It's just funny. So
It
it's
is actually.
swingers, you know, you got Viagra or the blue pill. And as I say that word, your face makes a thing. We'll call it a smile. You have to respect the smile before you respect the laugh. The smile has to come before the laugh. I don't want to be arrogant in a way to think that I'm just going to pull a fucking laugh. I'm not trying to force a laugh out of you. I'm trying to get you to smile. I'm trying to connect to you. So I'll put senior citizens and orgies. Hey, Yuma, Arizona, what's up with you guys and your orgies, man? You guys love fucking and sucking, don't you? We all do. Pause. So right there, the audience is talking to me. Literally, they start talking to me. They start smiling, and then like fucking my wife. I'm like, what's that, sir? What did you say? Your wife? What about your wife? So then the crowd comes in on it. And I'm like, oh, is this whole crowd right here a bunch of orgies? Son of a bunch of sick perverts. So then it's about them. It's not about me. And I start going there. Comedy, laughter is potent. It's like coke. It's a drug. And as they're smiling, I'm like, hey, I see that smile. I like that smile. Do you smile? Do you smile with your wife with that mouth? So then I say that. So then it starts to pull itself apart on stage. After I write 5 things down, we'll say 5 pages, like Mr. Carlin said, after a bit, only certain pieces of the words, the material from my notepad is going to come into my head, and then from my head onto the microphone. 90% of the time, the stuff, the material on my notebook doesn't become a joke. I make it into a joke. So the notepad is the soil. The words are the seeds, and the microphone is my hoe to the farm in front of me.
The crowd is the weather condition. So your
Exactly.
comedy is reactive to the vibe in the room. So you can actually tell what's going to get over and what isn't by the
Yeah.
reaction that you're feeding back on or the energy that you're getting back on from the crowd, which
Yep.
makes perfect sense. And I listened to enough of your sets that I noticed that about the way that you interact. What happens if you tell a joke on stage and it's offending people, by accident? Can you recover from that? And how would you recover it? Like, would you try to backpedal on that? Or would you work that discomfort into the show and kind of adapt to that and play on that? Or would you back off from that person?
For the people just listening to this, I'm talking into a Sharpie right now, and it's a microphone. Thinking of it as a microphone. Okay, so was that was that offensive to you guys? Come on. This is Somerton, Arizona. This is El Paso. This is Austin, Texas. Are you guys really offended at that abortion joke? It's just an abortion joke. It's just abortion. It's just a word, right? So then I may put more emphasis on just what I'm talking about because it's just a word. Yes, it's happening, but I'm not married to these words. I'm not married to the actual. I'm just making this shit up about abortion. I'm literally Frankensteining all these things together. I made a joke about. I used to be a caregiver. I was a caregiver for a certain behavioral agency here in town. I worked with special needs kids. Here we go, guys. So I made a joke about punting the special needs kid's head off my foot. I made that up. I worked with special needs kids. I still do, but I didn't actually punt his head off. I'm not an asshole. If I punted that kid's head off my foot, I might be in jail. I might be in prison. The stuff that I'm saying into the microphone is not serious. We're at a comedy show, guys. So I made the joke about punting this kid's head off my and I even did it. I did it on stage where I made the motion of punting this kid's head off my foot. and I got some laughs. But afterward, two women were in my audience and they're like, "Hey, you're the comedian that went on stage, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Why were you making fun of people with disabilities?" And I said, "I made most of that up." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "They're just jokes. We're at a comedy show, but I am a caregiver and I do have clients with special needs." So then they said, "So you're a bully?" "What are you talking about? I just made it up, ma'am. I just made it up. We're making shit up. Did I punt somebody's head off my foot like I'm Edward Norton in American History X? Or I made you bite the curve? No. I'm an entertainer. I'm a comedian. I'm a mentor for Veterans Treatment Court. I'm certified as a peer support specialist. I'm a volunteer mentor, and I help out with the community. I am a productive member of society, but I enjoy my laughter. I like making shit up. I'm an artist. So that, ma'am, that's what I was doing on stage. Like, so what you're saying is, I'm like, what I'm saying is that I made shit up on stage. And I actually didn't punt somebody's head off my foot. I just made it up. Well, don't you think that? No, I don't. I just made it up, ma'am. If you want to, you can write your own material and go to an open mic and have 5 minutes to say some stuff.
Well, in a situation like that too, if you lose the crowd, like okay, so these
Yeah.
people approach you after, but if you
Uh-huh.
lose the crowd, can
Yeah.
you get them back? Or would that comment kind of mark you as that guy for the rest of your set?
Great question. It's going to mark me sometimes, and I don't care. Perspective, I've been blown up, man. I've been blown up. I survived Korea. I survived malaria. My first Korea tour, my only Korea tour. I contracted malaria. I've been bomb blasted, shot at. My appendix ruptured in 2020. I almost drowned. And plus, I'm Mexican and I'm Catholic, so there's like a pedophile in my life, one or two. There's a couple pedophile priests around here. It's just life is ugly, guys. Life is ugly. And I say this stuff on stage. So, in response to what you said, I might lose a crowd, but let me see what I can do. All right, ladies, I think I lost you. Anyways, over here we were talking about farts and abortions. So, anyways, you see? So I physically shift my head from this part of the crowd to this part of the crowd. I shift, I'm like, all right, so that abortion joke didn't do well. Sir, can I talk to you about the menage a trois that I had last night? I made that up. That was improv. And he might be laughing. I'm making up stuff as I go, but it's happening in my head slowly and steadily. And as he or she or they are looking at me, sometimes the joke is writing itself in my head at that same time. With all due respect to myself and all pride in myself as a United States veteran and proud Satanist, hail Satan, I have done this long enough where I don't care if I bomb because I've bombed quite a few times. I haven't bombed a shit ton of times, but I've bombed quite a few times and it doesn't bother me because when you bomb on stage, what does that mean? It just means they're not laughing. But I have enough. I'm a charming guy, man. So I know my talents. I've been on stage that I'm like, oh, I'm a comedian. I'm dancing. Hey, you're that guy. Yes, ma'am. Can I help you out with something? Um, yeah, you did a dance performance. You're the cumbia guy, right? Yeah, you're a great dancer. So that person's telling me I'm a great dancer. That person over there is telling me I'm a good comedian. So I am going to bomb once in a while when I am doing a joke that might not land. I am a baby comedian, but I have been attempting stand up and performing stand up since roughly around 2012. So as I get more and more with comedy, I don't take myself so seriously. So as if a joke doesn't hit, then it doesn't hit. But if I was like, all right, abortion, all right, we won't. You know what? That didn't land with you guys, but it might land on the crowd that I have tomorrow. So as if something doesn't land, I talk about it rather than burying it.
It's a technique, right?
It's a
I've seen a
technique.
lot of comedians say, I told that joke in Flagstaff, Arizona the other day, and you should have seen how it went over there. So it's kind of a
Exactly.
diffusing technique, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now we've spent a lot of time talking about what happens if Raul pisses off his audience. Let's
Okay.
flip the table for a second. What
Okay.
offends you, right? You got to have a pretty good sense of humor. You got to be able to deflect stuff pretty well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what offends you, and what happens when somebody offends you?
Senior citizens and children. So if I hear about conversation or an actual physical thing of senior citizens talking to other people that are not as senior as them, and the younger ones are kind of like getting in their faces, it's one for me and somebody else to talk. And then maybe me and I get in a fight with another. I'm 41. I get in a fight with somebody that's a verbal fight or a physical fight with somebody that's my age. But if you're a senior citizen, if you're 75, the thing about Satanism that really taught me was the value of value and respecting value and respecting respect. And I lacked a lot of that in my early 20s. I didn't know how to respect respect, and I didn't know how to value value. I'm not saying all senior citizens deserve respect, but give the opportunity to respect people. And I don't know that senior citizen over there isn't a just a shitbag sex trafficker of kids, but I'm going to give him an opportunity. If I'm around him and makes a comment over my mohawk, and he's like, "Hey, I really like your mohawk," and I'm like, "Thank you so much," but he's talking to somebody else that's like like belittling him. He's like, "Da, you're just this or that." I'm like, "Relax, dude. Is this your grandpa?" And they're like, "What is it to you?" And I'm like, "What it is to me is this guy's a senior citizen. Him and his great grandson just trying to have the best day of their life. They're trying to have an amazing life, and you're over here fucking it up by treating him like a dirt bag." But look at him. He's a senior citizen. He doesn't. He's just trying to get by, just like you are, right? So how about you not be a dick before I make it my fucking business? So I will stand up for other people. I will stand up for treating a senior citizen like ass offends me.
Now, to go out on a high note, any good gig stories to share? Tales from the road? One night stands with comedy groupies? I mean, come on.
So my friend and producer Cody Beeson of 928 Comedy used to have these weekly open mics at the VFW Veterans of Foreign Wars post 1763. And I was one of the comedians, and we had a packed crowd. And so I started doing crowd work, and it's kind of my thing, but I got a few jokes on me. I was like going on a round robin, like a horseshoe through the whole audience. And I went into this gentleman and his girlfriend, but I didn't know it was his girlfriend. I didn't know if it was his girlfriend or his daughter, his younger daughter, or his little sister, or his friend, but she was really small. She was small in stature. She looked like a midget. She looked like a little person, a Chicana dwarf with the fucking hatchet or something. And I went in on her. Now, if you go into a VFW for a comedy open mic show, leave your feelings at the door because we're about to say some shit. And if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't come in. Watch some shows online. Watch what an adult comedy show is about. It's a post though, it's a VFW post. Veterans of foreign wars. It's gonna get a little heavy. So I went in on this lady and her boyfriend, but then I let it go, and then I did work on everybody else. It was a great for me, it was a great set. I give myself props. And there was a few other comics that went up. So then the guy, well, I'm sitting down and he's like motioning to me, "Hey, can you come over here?" So I went, and we go outside. He's like, "Hey, you're really funny, man." And I'm like, "Hey, thanks. I'm okay." He's like, "No, you really are. You're really funny. You really had them going on in there." But My girlfriend was offended, and I didn't know that it was his girlfriend. So my girlfriend was offended, and I was like, can you apologize to her? I was like, no, I can't. That's just stuff that I made up. And he's like, please, because this and this and this. You're really funny, man. So while this guy, we'll call him Joe. Joe is the boyfriend of the midget. So then another guy comes out, another patron comes out, and I called him the Filipino, but he was really Korean. Who cares? It's just a joke. But he comes out, he's like, you're really funny, dude. You're really funny. And then he tells the guy that's talking to me, Joe, he's like, yeah, he is. But he just went a little too much. And then the Korean guy, he was another, I had two veterans talking to me, by the way. These were the two veterans talking to me. And he's like, yeah, you went just a little too much, especially on the girlfriend. And I'm like, sorry, man, then you shouldn't come here. And he's like, come on, it's a comedy. I was like, it's a comedy show, man. He's like, you're just a little much. And by the time you know it, I had these two guys and then another patron talking to me. All of them were saying, no, they're like, you're really funny. I'm like, yeah, thanks. Thanks. I appreciate it. But then they're like, you just went a little too much. I'm like, well, you guys believe that. Not everybody else believes that. Everybody else is laughing. And then the one boyfriend, Joe, he's like, nobody was laughing. I'm like, yeah, they just didn't want to laugh because they saw your face. But I was just chilled out. I was fine. I've done this before. And he's like, come on, please, can you apologize to her? And then the other guy says, yeah, come on, apologize to her. And I'm like, So the only reason I started to think about apologizing is because I didn't want to cock block him. I wanted to guide his cock into his midget girlfriend. And
Very noble of you. Very
yeah,
noble.
I think so. I'm not a Christian. I'm not altruistic, but I am a fan of man. Al Pacino said, I am a fan of man and devil's advocate. So I was like, fuck it. So I went to the car and she's in there in her fucking seat, in her
Booster
little
seat. Yeah,
seat.
of course.
And the Joe, the boyfriend's like rolled down the window and she's in there looking scared of my words, my plague words, my parasitic words. I'm like, I'm sorry that you offended out of my jokes. They were just jokes. And after that, I fucking walked away. And I'm like, that's all you're gonna get. And that was the first and only time that I had ever apologized as a comedian. Groupies, I haven't, but women or men that want to fuck a comedian because they're funny are called chuckle fucks.
Well, I learned something today. Thank you for
Yep, yep, they're called chuckle fucks. I I get talked to a lot about my comedy and my dancing by women and men. I had a dude try to I had a dude try to fuck me one time as his Lyft driver. A gay guy tried to fuck me one time, but I told him I'm sorry, I'm straight pussy, dude. And he tried to fucking coerce me into, Raul, maybe you should like, try some new things once in a while. I'm like, listen, bitch. I tell people I'm like, I'm 5% gay. It means that I need that guy to be good looking and hot enough where he can fuck that lady so they can have babies so we can have more human beings on this planet. That's how good looking you need to be. I need you to be that good looking. I need you to be hot. I'm like, man, you're a good looking guy. I want you to fuck that lady over there. That woman needs to fuck you so we can have more kids. That's how gay I am.
that question just took the weirdest turn in the history of this show.
That
Thank
happens to
you.
me a lot. That happens to me a lot,
I'm not
Raul.
surprised after talking to you for an hour. Wow. Well, you know what? This has been a riot. I would love to have you back sometime to do this
Yeah, man.
again.
Yeah.
We end up going in about 30 different directions. As far as Raul is concerned, where can we find you? What are you doing that's exciting? What are you doing that's interesting? Do you have dance classes? If we come to Yuma, Arizona, you're going to come and pick our ass up from the airport, stuff like that. So just give us a little bit of a rundown on everything you're up to these days.
Shout out to the Infernal Legion. Like you mentioned, I am the co-founder and director of special activities for the Infernal Legion. So That's my baby. I'm working with my fellow Legionnaires, Reverend Jeff Bowling, Dwayne Burns, Rick Kohlmeyer, Wes Vanderpool, and myself. Oh, Jeff Ivan. Sorry about that, Jeff. That is one thing that I'm really working on. That's my baby, the Infernal Legion. InfernalLegion.net, I believe, right, guys? I'm also working on some dance classes. I've been approaching quite a few places, but I got to find a primary place to call home in a way. I do give private one-on-one classes. So you can find me on TikTok at House of Fire 13. You can send me a message on there. Instagram is at House of Fire, house_of_fire 13. And then the other one is at Raul.Atondo comedy. So I think I'm going to start putting all my comedy and my dance instructions and performances on TikTok and my House of Fire 13 Instagram. Professionally, I am involved with Veterans Treatment Court as a volunteer mentor. I help veterans stay out of jail and prison by acting as a moral supporter and trying to guide them. We try to guide them with employment. Started in New York a few years ago. We could always use more mentors because we're always going to get mentees. There's always fuckery afloat. Facebook, I think I'm going to be working on a professional Facebook page, but for now, it's just Raul Atondo. I am a junior. The other guy, he's in his late 70s, and there might be one more Raul Atondo on planet Earth, but I'm the only entertainer. I do some announcer gigs once in a while. I am going to start working on my own podcast. It's basically about what are satanic traits and virtues from a satanic veteran. But my TikTok is kind of what I want to grow more because it's just getting out there. Recently, I did a cumbia tutorial, and that can be found on YouTube under my name, just Raul Atondo, or April Salsa or Fuego Dance Studio. I also am trying to work on my own YouTube channel. I have a business card that you can probably find online.
When you're ready to release your own content, come back and tell us all about it. And I will expect a few chuckle fuck stories by the next time that you're here.
Chuckle fucks all up in my mouth.
Thanks again for being here, my friend. I hope we get to talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hail Satan.
Cheers. Hail Satan. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and a huge thank you to our guests and all of you for joining us today. Please drop a like or comment down below. For questions or comments, you can email me directly at information@neutralwisdom.ca. You can listen to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. A like and subscribe go a long way in getting this podcast out there. Check me out on Facebook under Robert Shirley, and check out Instagram at neutral_wisdom. And be sure to visit the website at neutralwisdom.ca. And don't forget, Neutral Wisdom, Contemplations of a Satanic Warlock, now available at Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle formats. Until next time, ever forward.
You have been listening to the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. For more information, email us at information.neutralwisdom.ca, Facebook under Robert Shirley, or Instagram at neutral_wisdom. Also check out our website at neutralwisdom.ca. Program copyrighted 2025. Devilish Gentleman Enterprises.